G'day and welcome to my garage. I know the the motor housing has to be approximately 35 millimeters off the base, but that's all adjustable and this can move on its 4 bolts, but as a base point I need a 34 millimeters off the base and the shaft to run parallel with this housing, and the housing itself parallel with all the pulleys. So I've done a quick measurement, 35 mil. Turn that around. And now I know the motor is parallel to the mount. So I'll mark out the position of where the bolts are going, remembering which way in the slot where the bolts will sit, and in this case they will mount to the bottom of the slot so that the motor can fall down to take up tension. Yep, okay. Take up tension. So there's 2 places, like the old motor, there's 2 places to adjust for tension. The motor itself can slide up and down. This is sitting sideways at the moment. In the brackets to the chassis, it's down here in the vise. There's a slot, so we've got about 15 mil travel here, and there's about the same 15 mil. Let's see, what have we got? 32 less 10, that's 22, so we'll say 22 mil travel in the motor slot, and there's a little bit less. So we've got about 35 to 40, or combined we've got about 35 to 40 millimeters of travel for a belt tension. Alright, so I'll show you this bracket a little bit later. I've had to strengthen the top, strengthen this part, strengthen piece in there, strengthen piece in there. This motor was 90 millimeters longer than the original, so I put a 60 mil. I've extended. That's the original end there. I've extended it 60 millimeters. Hence all the strength here, because this originally had another plate like this here, and then it was tied together with a 25 by 5 bar. That was up here. That tied it together. But this plate had to go because the mounting was different. The old motor mounted off the motor bell housing. This one is a standard fitment. It's got a pedestal mount down there. Why didn't I, you may ask, why didn't I mount the pedestal mount straight to underneath this plate? It may have worked, but I wasn't happy with it. That can't mount, the motor mount can't mount straight to this plate. That puts the 8-inch pulley and this pulley only about 20 millimeters, 25 millimeters I think I measured, apart. So that wasn't going to work. The motor would have had to drop down, or would have had to build a box to drop the motor down so I can use the belt that I've already got. I don't want to buy another belt. And the factor why I didn't do it, this capacitor housing would be directly on the bottom, and it was going to interfere possibly, and I think it would have. The capacitor housing would have hit the bench. So I had to get this out of the way. Anyhow, leave it with me. I'll bring you back a little bit later after I clean it up, and I've done most of the strengthening work, if not all of it. And we'll see how it fits up and cleans up. Catch you later. Notice which way the motor turns. Turns anti-clockwise. This is a cutter which needs to turn clockwise. So the motor is turning the wrong way. Unbelievable. Now I don't know if I can turn that motor the other way. I'll have a look on the internet, see if I can find some information, or find an electric motor rewinding fellow where I live and see if he can wire it to go the opposite direction. But this motor turns the wrong way. Not happy. I got to thinking, let's start that again. I got to thinking, I remembered this, because I did the bearings on here, the shaft came out the back to run the cooling fan. And I thought, well, hang on, if the motor's running, anti-clockwise on the other side, if I turn the motor around, the thing should turn clockwise. So I put the motor on backwards and to see if I can, but I couldn't remember how much of a shaft. I knew there wasn't much shaft hanging out the back as there was on the front. So I've pulled the fan off, and there's about 18 millimetres of shaft. We'll say 15 because we need some clearance. I measured the hub on the pulley, and 15 will get the grub screw or the set screw onto the shaft, but the pulley section itself would stick unsupported past that. Not really good. Not really good. So the shaft's not long enough. So hang on. Don't ask me why. I thought, what's behind this plate? And yes, it is unplugged. What's behind this plate? Because sometimes electric motors have wiring diagrams on them or in them to show you what wires to pick up. Oh look, that's interesting. Well, this was filthy. I cleaned that off, and lo and behold, connect supply lines to terminals 2 and 5. To reverse rotation, interchange black leads on terminals 1 and 5. Now, terminals 5 and 1. I can see that, you can't. Well, actually, I can't see it at the present moment. Nope, we're in emergency mode. There we go. So, there we go, terminal 5 and terminal 1. Well, that's a red lead. That's got crap around it. But anyhow, there's a there was a black lead hiding in here. Now I've already turned them around. So we'll get the air in and clean that out. Yeah, it doesn't want to leave. So as I explained, I've already turned the wires, swapped the wires around. Oh, come on, compressor. Okay, I'll say that again. As I explained, I've already swapped the wires around. So let's just put it back together. And this was really annoying me. I went on the net, had a look for motor rewinders around where I live. There's two. Not that I don't want to support them, but hey, they're in business, so they're not going to be cheap, and I'm cheap. This is a second-hand motor, for crying out loud. Nothing worse to buy a second-hand something and then have to spend money on it. Then you end up spending as much to get it going as you would with a new motor, or new just about anything, except for cars. Oh, then even cars. If you blow a motor up these days, it's cheaper just to buy another car, 15, 20 grand for a diesel motor. So that's back together. Where's the cover? Now, which way does this go on? That way. If I can find the screws. Wrong screwdriver. I tightened that motor, that fan blade, didn't I? Whoops. Sorry about that. Bring you back into picture. But anyhow, I'll put this back together. So, if everything's right, well, that wanted to be on the ground. We are switched off. So I need it to turn clockwise, don't I? Here we go. Can you see that? Yep. And you can see it's turning clockwise. Yes. I'll put this motor together and back on the frame, and I'm a happy chappy again. Catch you later.
Gotta love these step drills. They work quick, excuse me, and they chamfer the holes while they're at it. Okay, this gives me a bit more adjustment of the motor in this bracket.
There was a reset switch. That's what this hole's for, so I can press the reset switch if I ever need to. I doubt it, but hey, you never know. So that's the bracket, the motor mount finished. The mounting holes. Ventilation holes for the motor fan, because the motor fan housing is hard up against the inside of the mount. So I just whack some holes in again with the step drill. A bit of extra strengthening up here to tighten these up. And then of course the strengthening here because of the offset. The motor was offset to the original bracket position, motor position. So just do a final clean up, degrease, get that stuff off, and a paint. We have here the, excuse me, we have here the counter shaft plate that offsets the counter shaft at 50 millimetres so the motor would line up. So here's my paintbrush. I'll give it a coat of paint. This is the first counter shaft, well I'll call it the first counter shaft, from the motor, driven from the motor to the first 4-stage pulley and 8-inch pulley. So So this is the one over the back. I'll call it the first counter shaft. Yes, pulling all this apart to clean things up, and I noticed I had forgotten to put a flat in this shaft. A keyway would be nice, but I know a bloke who's got a mill, but he's got the mill pulled apart to fix this. Just after Christmas, I'm going to the daughter's house, and the son-in-law has a milling machine which I've already used to do the universal compound. So at Christmas I'll take all 3 shafts out, the 2 counter shafts and the main spindle, and I will mill a keyway in each of those shafts. But for the time being, I'm just filing a flat. Now what I'm looking for here is the width of this flat is the same width by eye along the full length of the shaft. That looks good. Okay, that's square. These are the drilling for the Gibbs screws.